Hello, and hey, ladies and gentlemen. I am Professor Garryfish, and welcome to another part of Realism Review of Subnautica. This is a series where I will be examining the creatures in Subnautica and try to figure out how realistic they are when compared to real-life animals. This is a series that will not only look at the design and look at the creatures, but will also consider the biomes and environments that they are found across in the game's world. This time, we will have a look at the Garryfish. This animal reminds me somewhat of a snail or some other insect with their eyes on stalks. So let's go through their traits as usual. There isn't much to go on the in-game databank. It only states that it has eye stalks that may be beneficial for spotting predators when the Garryfish is hiding amongst corals. It is also more active during daylight hours, depending mostly on its camouflage to stay hidden from predators. From the way the Garryfish is described, it seems a bit like the rabbit of this world, in that it is a rather skittish creature that mostly spends its time hiding from larger predators or trying its darndest to stay alive. But something that isn't stated in the in-game databank is that the edges of the Garryfish fins may actually have some red glowing lines that are caused from bioluminescence. So this is something that will need to be taken into consideration when judging the realism of the Garryfish. So let's get started with the Garryfish's camouflage. Its coloration is a light brown with yellow stripes on the upper side of its body. This is an interesting choice of color from the developers, because the Garryfish seems to be generally hiding amongst corals, and considering the coloration of most corals in Subnautica, this doesn't exactly help in narrowing down what exactly the Garryfish hides among. But what might help is the general coloration of the environment that the Garryfish lives in. It is generally found in the dunes, shallow and the underwater islands. Here, the bright coloration might help the Garryfish blend in amongst the sand-covered bottom due to the bright coloration surrounding it. But what about the corals that it is said to hide among? Well, here is where it gets a little bit complicated, because I don't know many fishes that hide among corals in such a fashion as the Garryfish does. Now, to be certain, there are fishes that hide amongst corals. Looking at a coral reef during nighttime will reveal that most fishes retreat into crevices beneath rocks in order to protect themselves from predators during lower light conditions. This almost fits rather well with the Garryfish. The Garryfish would be able to squeeze into rather tight places thanks to its thin body shape. This shape is generally adopted by fishes that hide amongst coral in order to better fit into tight crevices. So the slim shape of the Garryfish does fit, apart from one pretty significant problem. And that problem is, well, the eyes of the Garryfish. Stalked eyes are said to be used in order to spot predators, and I can promise you it's going to get a good look at the predators before it bites those eyes off. Now that may have sounded a little bit morbid, so let me elaborate on what I mean by that. When the Garryfish has to deal with predators like the stalker, which is said to be able to reach into crevices with its long mouth, the Garryfish is going to have some serious issues. What would happen is that the first thing that the stalker would be able to get a hold of would be the stalked eyes. So even if the stalker is just able to bite off a little bit, it would deal significant damage to the Garryfish, more than likely blinding it in one bite. And then the Garryfish would be left without its eyes and would either get stuck and starve to death, or get loose, and at which point it would swim around blind and then starve to death. Or just get eaten. It's a bad time, either way. Therefore, I will argue that the stalked eyes of the Garryfish are unrealistic and would be much better if the eyes were closer to its mouth. Finally, let's go to the glowing fins of the Garryfish. As I have stated previously, the bioluminescence in Subnautica is generally overused. My assumption is that the developers wanted the game to be filled with bright and pleasant colors, even during nighttime. And I will say that overall I find the amount of bioluminescence to be overused in the game, but every case needs to be addressed individually in order to make better criticisms of them. To once again establish what bioluminescence is generally used for is attracting prey, communication between other individuals of the same species, and distracting predators. But it can of course have some strong side effects. It is sometimes used by predators in order to spot prey that is otherwise trying to stay hidden. The in-game databank does not make a statement of what the Garryfish uses its bioluminescence for, but considering the Garryfish seems to be a skittish and shy creature, I would not assume that it uses it to lure in prey. I would also consider it to be unlikely that it uses it to distract predators because it doesn't have any means of detaching its fins and leaving them behind. That leaves communication between other individuals. The kind of communication the glowing fins would be intended for, I would guess, is for mating, since it is usually the only time a creature like the Garryfish would be needing to interact with other individuals of the same species. But this would be unlikely considering that most creatures in Subnautica are stated to be hermaphroditic. However, they are stated to need two individuals in order to fertilize the eggs, so the glowing fins might be used in order to find other individuals of the same species in order to mate. The problem with this hypothesis is that the Garryfish seems to be constantly glowing, or at least its fins are, putting itself in significant danger. What I would have changed is that the Garryfish only uses the glowing fins during very select times of the year when it comes time for mating. Otherwise, the Garryfish is just constantly putting itself in danger without many benefits. It is, of course, not uncommon for animals to put themselves at risk during mating, sometimes dying after mating. But being in a constant state of vulnerability for the sake of mating is rather unbeneficial and unrealistic. So overall, the Garryfish is somewhat unrealistic in terms of its bioluminescence and placements of its eyes. The shape of the body, although, fits generally well with what the Garryfish uses as a means of protection and hiding from predators. That's all I had for you today. If you liked the video, be sure to like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you all next time.